we have our mission. We know what we're out to do to ensure truth, integrity, fairness in journalism, specifically as it relates to coverage of Israel. But the way we're doing it is beginning to evolve. Now, first of all, you always see, here's the stats, here's how many critiques and how many videos and all the things we did, and these numbers are higher than before. But that's not what's really exciting to me. What's exciting to me is that since July 6th, we've been cited by outside news sources 35 times. Now, some of these are Jewish news sources or Israel-focused news sources, but some of them are actually just regular mainstream news sources, and that's really exciting. And in the past, it's the sort of thing that happened once in a great while, as we say in Israel, pambe. But now it's actually starting to happen quite frequently, and it's by design. As you know, Ben and Jerry's brought this boycott action against Israel, and a lot of people are saying, well, boycotts are free speech, is protected under the First Amendment. Well, one of my pet peeves is that whole issue, because, I'm, as they say, a recovering lawyer. The first step is admitting that you are a lawyer. And whenever legal issues come up, I always take notice of them. And it actually is a myth that boycotts are free speech. Domestic boycotts, if they're done in a certain way, can be free speech. So you think about the Montgomery bus boycotts in the 1950s during the Civil Rights Movement. That's what we all think of. But a boycott of a foreign nation is actually not free speech. For those of you who are legal buffs, it's because it's covered by what's called the Commerce Clause, that only the Congress has the ability to regulate foreign trade. And there's a reason for that. An international boycott could be things like sanctions on Iran or the blockade of Japan during World War II. Like, this is what international boycotts are really all about. And so I had a press conference with Media Central where I explained this, and the Washington Post ended up actually carrying that story, which was a real success for all of us. It was a team effort, because what happened was, the team at Media Central put this together. The team over at Honest Reporting helped me do the research and the background work to prepare for the press conference. And then I was the one actually presenting the material, but there were a lot of people in behind the scenes making this possible. And the result ultimately was that because the press is starting to see us with more credibility, they were willing to quote us and publish that quote. And we got that quote out there. This is a really neat one where we pointed out that there were funds from the Palestinian Authority government that were being used to fund anti-Semitic riots, including burning swastikas and things like that. And the members of parliament from both Holland and Belgium discovered our work. And again, this wasn't something we were pitching to them, and they brought that to their respective parliaments. And now the parliaments of Belgium and Holland are launching an investigation into the actions of the Palestinian Authority, in particular with European Union money, as a result of the work that we did that got seen by these members of parliament. So that's just a real change from the way we used to work. And it's no longer just sort of writing critiques and sending angry letters. It's actually we're being noticed, and we're seeing action being taken based on our work. So you could see what the tweet said was, activists in the Gaza Strip on Monday launched incendiary balloons into Israel, setting off at least 3 fires. I mean, think about that. Activists were setting off fires. Like, in what possible universe is that called an activist? Like, at best, that's called maybe a violent rioter. At worst, it's called a terrorist or an arsonist or an attacker or something like that. And we see the Associated Press doing this from time to time, and sometimes they'll use the words like protesters. And so we put together this tweet, and you can see the tweet has the perfect combination of being just a little bit snarky, and a little bit kind of cheeky, but also not over the top, not angry, not going overboard. And it was just enough that it had the right tone for Twitter, and it got a lot of attention. And then we have all sorts of other tricks that we use to help get the tweet more views by sharing it in certain ways and tagging people and all sorts of techniques that we use. Anyway, the result was that the tweet went viral. Tons of people saw it. Fox News picked it up. The Daily Mail in the UK picked it up, and eventually the Associated Press started changing the way they referred to these violent rioters. So this is a little something that we're doing. We're trying to find a name for this program, but it's a special research project and it's a little more proactive. We've begun discovering people who are writing for mainstream news and yet actually do things like praising Hitler or saying Hitler was right, or saying that that Jews are Nazis and that Israel is Nazi Germany, things like that. I mean, people who are clearly, blatantly anti-Semitic. I mean, this is not legitimate criticism of Israel. This is actual anti-Semites. And the way I say it, I actually wrote a tweet where I said, I like to phrase it this way: I'm against cancel culture. I don't think people shouldn't have a job just because they made a mistake or even because they're a racist. But I do think that if you're anti-Semitic, maybe you shouldn't be reporting on Israel. Like, report on something else. I'm not saying anti-Semites shouldn't have jobs. I mean, maybe some people feel they shouldn't, and there's something to be said for that too. But at the very least, they shouldn't be reporting on, of all things, Israel. Like, it's the one thing they should not be reporting on. Certainly not for mainstream news sources like CNN and the Washington Post and the Guardian, Newsweek. This woman's also written for the New York Times. So people think they're getting objective news about Israel because the brand name is a well-known brand name, and yet the specific woman, in this case, Mariam Barghouti, is an actual anti-Semite, like an actual Hitler-supporting anti-Semite. And so we're putting together a new project where we're using special software and special research tools to be able to track this down, because there's a lot of it out there. We've already successfully done it twice. We did it once during the war in last May, and we've done it again with Mariam Barghouti. When we did it last May, the woman, her name was Tala Halawa. She ended up actually being fired from the BBC. And Mariam Barghouti is a freelancer, so she wouldn't be technically fired, but we are keeping an eye out to see if any of these news outlets are using her anymore. And so far, they don't seem to be. So this is another way where we're making a difference. But, you know, for me, it's not about the individual person. For us, it's not about the individual person. It's not about Barghouti or about Halawa. It's about the news outlets that chose to work with these people. The news readers should know if their news source is truly reliable and something that you can trust, or whether they're having anti-Semites report on Israel. I did a lot of speaking on television during the last war, and we did a lot of writing publicly and a lot of discussion and debate. And we discovered a voice that works for young people, for liberal progressives, a voice that touches the progressive values and reaches people where they are. And it's having a meaningful impact. And we're already finding other organizations and student groups are reaching out to us to ask us to teach them because they want to learn how we've developed this technique and how it works. So as part of this, we decided we wanted to do a survey to get ourselves some actual scientific proof that our method works. And as part of that survey, what we did is we designed a whole bunch of questions. Well, not just we worked with a professional survey firm that together with us designed a series of questions to identify where people are, both in their personal lives, education, age, demographic information, and then also where they are on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Do they know about it? Do they have strong opinions, or do they not? If so, which direction do those opinions lead? We're already getting initial data back, and we don't have all the final tabulated data yet. When we do, I'll be excited to share it with you, but I can tell you just from looking at the initial data, it works. And what we did was we gave them a series of questions. Then we had them watch a 5-minute video of us explaining what we do and how we do it. And then after that video, we asked them another series of questions. And the idea is to see, did we move the needle? Did the people involved in this survey, we surveyed 500 people between ages 18 to 44. And the question is, did they change their views based on the way we present the situation to them? And the answer is, even from the initial data, we can already see that they did.
First, a little background. Israel is a small country in the Middle East, about the size of New Jersey or half the size of Lake Michigan. Next to Israel is a Palestinian area called Gaza. Gaza is ruled by an Iranian-backed Palestinian militant group called Hamas, which the US and most of the Western world designate as a terror organization. Hamas is terribly violent and oppressive toward the local Palestinian people, much in the way that ISIS is oppressive toward the people of Syria. Hamas is also in a state of war against its neighbor Israel, which is why they started this conflict by firing thousands of rockets on Israeli civilians and forcing Israel to respond. Like any modern Western liberal democracy, Israel is not perfect, but it is a positive example of many progressive values, like equal rights, successful nationalized healthcare, freedom to practice all religions or to be secular, and more. Israel is also diverse. Democratic Congressman Richie Torres pointed out,
this is not a black and white conflict. As you said, 20% of the Israeli population consists of Israeli Arabs, Israeli Palestinians, and a majority of the Israeli Jewish population consists of Mizrahi Jews from North Africa and the Middle East, Sephardic Jews who are Spanish Jews, there are Ethiopian Jews. This is not a black and white conflict. This is a brown versus brown conflict.
And Bill Maher eloquently summarized it with the phrase,
only about 44% of the Israelis look like your dentist.
And so I feel like we have to be...
This is a great and humorous way to correct a huge misconception. So, with all of that in mind, I personally tried to bring a little more depth and understanding to the public conversation. Everything I say here and on television comes from articles on the Honest Reporting website, rigorously researched and filled with links to original source materials. We make this available for anyone who wants to double check. It may seem a radical thing to say, but I don't think peace is that hard. It's just that both Israelis and Palestinians are victims of terror groups that invest tremendous resources in trying to stop peace, on the ground and in the public debate. But we don't have to let them win. If we seek out reliable information, and if we really listen to each other, then, at least I believe, we really can succeed in making the world a better place for everyone. To see how you can help, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or subscribe to our newsletter at honestreporting.com.